in California. Unfortunately, when I was conceived, my mother was not married. I was conceived in the year 1966. And back then, it was a lot harder for a young woman who was not married to be accepted by society when she was pregnant. So my mother and my father actually did look for an abortion. Thank God they were not able to succeed in that. But I grew up with a lot of issues. I had spinal meningitis as an infant. I had a lot of issues growing up, passed around from parent to parent, and then I ended up as a drug addict. I grew up in the 80s in LA. I was a cocaine addict, crystal meth addict, did a lot of LSD, went to a lot of Grateful Dead concerts, really had a hard time in life. But in 1987, I went to a Grateful Dead Bob Dylan concert, and I overdosed that day, not only in one single day, lines of crystal meth, doing LSD, methadone, PCP, hallucinogenic mushrooms, all in one day. And I was in the hospital, very close to death. The doctors had been pouring, the nurses mostly, because we know nurses work 10 times harder than doctors. But they were, I see we got nurses in the house. They were pouring bottles of charcoal water down my throat to try to soak the poison and the drugs out. But it was a doctor in the hospital who pulled me outside. He said, I need to talk to you about something. And he pulled me outside. And as he sat down and talked to me, I realized, oh gosh, this guy's going to preach at me. He's going to tell me how evil I am and how I'm going to burn in hell and all this stuff. But instead, he just looked at me and he said, God loves you. You are so valuable to him. You are worth so much more than this. And I was just like, kind of blown away, because all my life I've been told how evil I was. You know, I figured if I ever set foot in a church, it's going to just crumble to the ground around me. So I got out of the hospital the next day, and I was in Long Beach, California, about an hour away, swimming in the harbor, trying to come down off everything, and a boat comes up next to me. And the guy in the boat's looking at me going, you were at the Grateful Dead concert. And I'm like, how do you know that? He goes, I'm the fireman that found you and put you in an ambulance. And he goes, can I tell you how much God loves you? You are so valuable. He said to me almost word for word what the doctor had said the day before. So that's the week that I gave my life to Christ. That's the week that I gave my life to Christ. Now, obviously, I'm not a perfect Christian in any way. If I was a perfect Christian, I'd be up there right now sitting on the right hand of the Father. But no, I'm not. But that day was an amazing day. And then that weekend, see, I went to this church and I'm like, I'm really into punk rock and metal and all this great music. And I asked these people in this church, are there any good Christian bands that like sing rock? And the first person walks up to me, she hands me this cassette tape. Kids, do you guys know what a cassette tape is? And I looked at it and it said Amy Grant. And I'm like, oh gosh. When I listened to it, I'm like, I hope there's better Christian music than this. And this other guy walks up to me and he hands me this tape. And it's handwritten on the side. It just says The Crucified. And he says, they're playing this Saturday night. You want to go see them? And I listened to it and I'm like, yes, I need to go see this band. This group of high school kids, okay? 1987, this group of high school kids, mohawks, crazy looking high school kids, blasting out punk rock, but they're singing about God and about his saving grace. And I remember being at this concert thinking, this is kind of crazy. Like there's a mosh pit going, but every time anyone fell down, everyone stopped and picked them up and made sure they're okay. I'm like, okay, that's a little weird. But they looked over on the table and they had this t-shirt stand, and this girl, Stacy, she was the drummer's girlfriend back then. They're married now, but she was the drummer's girlfriend. She was selling this shirt and it had a picture of a demon in a noose. And it said, Gal 220. And I walked over, I'm like, who is this gal? Number 220, who is she? And Stacy just started laughing. She's introduced herself, and I said, hi, my name's Brian. She goes, Brian, that's Galatians 2:20. I'm like, what's that mean? And she's like, well, it means, this is what it says. It says, for I have been crucified with Christ. I no longer live, but Christ lives within me. And I was like, dude, that's what happened to me last week. And so I went back and I'm going off, and then the band starts singing this song. It's 4 high school kids start singing this song, and they start talking about a silent scream. And I was listening to the lyrics, and I went back over to Stacy. I'm like, what are they talking about? And she explained to me what was going on with abortion. And she told me that that song was singing about the baby screaming for their life. And I remember I got that cassette tape. I walked around days and weeks putting it in my Walkman. Remember a Walkman? Listening to this song. And then I started to hang out with this girl named Ruth Ann. Ruth Ann Tebben, now Ruth Ann Shepherd. And she used to drive me to church. And she would tell me about this thing called Operation Rescue. And they would say that they would sit down in front of the doors. They would lay their lives down for the sake of the children. So about a month later, a friend of mine from another band called Precious Death, talking about the precious death of Christ, invited me to this Operation Rescue event. I had never been to that. I had never, I'd heard about it. And there was about 500 people there. That was just on the pro-abortion side. And then a few hundred Christians. These people had a woman half naked on a cross pretending to crucify her to mock the Christians. And I remember that day, the pro-lifers didn't go in front of the door because their 500 pro-abortion people had created this tunnel to help women go in to have abortions. But when I walked up, they couldn't tell I was pro-life because I had a mohawk and all this stuff. Nobody that looked like me had ever been involved in the pro-life movement. So they asked me, they go, you're a big guy. I used to weigh over 300 pounds. They're like, would you go help us guard the door? Make sure those pro-lifers don't get to the door? I'm like, all right. So they took me up, and the first time I see this girl start coming down and they're escorting her in to have the abortion, I locked my arms around the door, and I ended up getting arrested. But what happened is that girl saw that, she left, and she never came back. And she ended up keeping her baby. So that was a Saturday. Back then, I worked at an oil change place, a Valvoline instant oil change. I used to call myself a licensed lube technician. But I changed oil. I was a grease monkey. But I called my boss and I said, hey, I don't work on Saturdays anymore. He goes, what do you mean? I said, I got another job. To me, my other job was I was going to go start saving babies. I caught fire. I looked at that and I said to myself, my goal in life though, I want to be a rock star. I want to go out and sing in a Christian punk band and bring people to the Lord. So what I did is I called up my friend Jeff White, who with Rescue, and I asked him, I said, is there any program I could do for a year? And he was just starting this program called Missionaries to the Preborn. And so what I did is I said, I'm going to have 1 year of pro-life work. I'm going to do 1 year, then I could say I've done my part. So I started going with Jeff, and I moved into his house, and I joined these Missionaries to the Preborn, and we were going from abortion mill to abortion mill, doing our prayer vigils and doing rescues. And this one Saturday in Los Angeles, right across the street from MacArthur Park, if you remember the Donna Summer song, Someone Left the Cake Out in the Rain, that's where this abortion mill was. And I walked in, and this abortion mill was geared towards illegal immigrants. There was literally a guy on the corner passing out Spanish coupons for $40 off an abortion on the corner. So I walked in with a girl, this is a young girl, and we would go in on what we called a truth team. Long before video cameras and Lila Rose and David Delyden were doing that, video cameras back then you'd have to hold on your shoulder, so we couldn't do undercover video. So we're going in, and she would ask for a pregnancy test, and I would sit in the lobby pretending to read the magazines, but I was really putting pro-life literature in all the pages of all the magazines. And I'm in there, but the girl that I was with who went back for the pregnancy test was taking too long because she would usually sneak into the abortion room and put literature under the pillow and everywhere she could. And I thought to myself, maybe she got caught. I need to walk up. So I walked up to the counter. And right as I walked up to the counter, there's about 20 women in the hallway, another 20 in the waiting room. They were trying to get us out first because this was all illegal immigrants in there. And they saw us come in, they're like, we're going to just get you guys in real quick. And as I'm standing there, the door to the abortion room swung open. And there was a young girl about 16 years old, long dark hair, laying on a table, her head turned to me, tears coming out of her eyes, as the abortionist was killing her baby. I witnessed a human being murdered in front of me, and a young girl probably emotionally damaged for the rest of her life. I remember going home that night, into the shower, crying out to God, and I heard a voice. I heard a voice say, "Brian, save my children." Amen. And I knew, how could I say, oh, I'm going to do 1 year of pro-life work and then say I've done my part? No. You cannot say you've done your part until we bring an end to this Holocaust. Amen. One, a little bit funny but good story is, before I went home, actually, I went outside and there were several of my friends out there. You may know who Troy Newman is, the director of Operation Rescue Now, and Jeff White and a few others. And I remember I said to them, "Follow me." Now, listen, I grew up in San Pedro, California. My whole step family's Hispanic, but I failed Spanish. The only Spanish I can speak is food. I can speak good food. But I knew this word. And I said, "Follow me." And we started running back into the abortion room. And we just started yelling the word, "La migra, la migra, la migra," which means immigration. Every single woman in the hallway in the room ran out of that abortion mill that day. All but one. All but one, and that's the one that I saw on the table. It was too late. It was too late. So I knew from that moment that I had to dedicate my life to the pro-life movement, and that's what I've been doing full time ever since. Several years ago, I got to go to Poland. I was speaking at a conference in Scotland, and my best friend and I decided to go to Poland, and we wanted to visit Auschwitz and Birkenau. Anybody ever been to a concentration camp in Europe? Anybody? Few people. Something that I think should be required by everybody. But I remember walking through Auschwitz, just dead silent, sick to my stomach as I saw this. And then we got over to Birkenau, the other concentration camp just down the road. And we were walking down the train tracks, and they had showed us where they would unload the human beings off this train and separate them. See, they would take this half and they say, you guys look pretty healthy over here, so we're going to get you quickly over to get a shower and get dressed and get a job. The rest of you guys over here, you look like you're really tired. Some of the older people, you know what? Yeah, we're going to send you over here. So the healthy people would go to the barracks. They'd walk you over to the barracks, get you changed. All the people that they say were old and tired, you guys, we have a special place we're going to take you. So they would take the group, the older people, and people that they thought in their minds weren't capable of going right to work. And they would take them into this building and they would say, "Take off your clothes. You're going to go have a nice hot shower." They've been standing in this train for a week in their own feces with dead bodies around them. So these people thinking over here, they're thinking they're about to get a hot shower. And we're standing outside this building and they're talking to us about it. And they would drop gas canisters into the room. And within a few minutes, everybody on this side, you're all dead now. You're all laying on the floor dead. Now the healthy group over here, see what they did with you is they took you over to change. Now they've marched you to the back of this building, and they open the back doors and that smell of death comes out. And they tell you, you're going to go pick up all these bodies and you're going to put them into the incinerator. And if you even hesitate, they just shoot you on the spot. So you, right here, you walk in and there's your grandmother laying on the floor dead. You walk in and there's your little daughter laying on the floor dead. And if you even pause, they kill you too. And I'm standing there at this building knowing that this just happened 50, 60 years ago, thinking to myself, how did this happen in our world? How did this happen? How did we allow this to happen? And I remember looking past the distance, and I saw way past there was this old house outside of the camp. And I thought to myself, what if that was my house? What if I had lived in that house at that time? What if somebody from this camp had escaped and ran to my house and I was standing in the yard with my kids and they said, help me, hide me, save me? Would I have stood up? Would I have taken them into my home? Would I have risked knowing what the Nazis would do to me to save one life? And that's when God spoke to me again. And he said, Brian, stop. Stop asking yourself, what if that was your house? Because that is your house. That house was every one of our homes. We don't have to wonder, what would we have done back then? We have to ask ourselves, what are we doing today? What are we doing today when in our backyards, innocent human beings, 3,000 a day, are taken into buildings? They may not have gas canisters dropped in, but they're being ripped limb from limb. And they're being thrown into medical waste containers and then sold to universities. Every one of us lives in that house right now. Every single one of us. Some people at this point will go, Brian, well, that's what you're called to do. That's your calling in life. That's not what I'm called to do. What does the Bible say that the two most important things, our real calling in life, what are the two most important things? Everything can be brought down to two things. What are they? Anyone know that? Love your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Your neighbor is not just the guy that lives next door that won't return your hammer. Our neighbor is our fellow human person. Anna, come up here for a minute, please. I'm going to use you as an example, if that's okay. All right? Anna, I need you to lay down right here. Just lay down right here. Okay? Now, I'm going to tell you a parable. Lay down like you've been beaten up. You guys should know this. If you didn't, you haven't spent any time in Sunday school. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit about our calling in life. See, Anna was just beaten up and left in a ditch, right? And first comes this Levite. And he's walking by and he looks down and he's like, oh, man, I warned her to stop running her mouth. But, you know, I gotta go. I got an appointment over here. And then the priest walks by, does the same thing. You know, I got mass starting in about 2 hours. I should go prepare. But then came a good Samaritan. Now, where are all the clergy? Where are all the priests? We still have some clergy here? I need you to help me out here. Father Miller, come up here. Come up here real quick. Hurry. Come on, Father. Father, from right there, that's fine. Are there any versions of the Bible? New King James, NIV, whatever version. Are there any versions of that story, any, where the Samaritan, before he went over there, walked over here and prayed and said, God, am I called to a ditch ministry? Did he do that first? No. What he did is he looked down, he saw his neighbor, he reached down, and he loved his neighbor as himself. Give Anna a big hand. Okay. So when we leave here today, there's something I want you guys to think about. Right over here is going to be a ditch, an imaginary ditch. Anna's not going to be laying there. In that ditch, 60 million innocent baby boys and girls. 60 million. More. So when you leave here today, are you going to be the priest? Are you going to be the Levite? Or are you willing today to say, I will be the Samaritan? I will reach out. I will love my neighbor as myself. You need to ask yourself that today. I have 7 children, and I have a little grandbaby, Mia. Now I get to hang out a lot with Dr. Alveda King, niece of Martin Luther King Jr. She tells me stories about talking to her uncle and talking to her daddy about what they did and what they were doing. I believe that we are going to see the end of the abortion holocaust. I believe this is the generation that will abolish abortion. I know, and it has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with any goodness in me whatsoever. But I know that when my little granddaughter Mia sits on my lap one day, or her little daughter says, "Grandpa, when they were killing babies, what did you do? What did you do?" I'm going to be able to tell her that I stood up, that I loved my neighbor as myself. What are your descendants going to say about you? Are you going to be able to say that I stood up? Or are you going to say, it's not what I was called to do? Thank you for having me here. God bless you guys. And listen. I'm just some idiot. I'm just some idiot. That God has given me the grace to have a second chance in life. And he's given me a voice. Every one of us, every single one of us has an opportunity to be a voice somewhere. Use your voice. Stand up. And let's be the generation that abolishes abortion. God bless you and thank you very much.